Well, we're back in Bereshit here, back in Genesis. And we're going to be going, well, we're going to try Midrash Tanchuma. We're going to try and see if we like it. Ooh. The other option was Or HaChaim. So we were either going to go backward in time to Tanchuma. Our Tanchuma that we have today is a compilation of several Midrashim. There's an older one that was also called Tanchuma that we think might date to the 8th century. Then there's Yamaladenu, which is, I'm not sure how old that was. But they're both older than Rambam. He quotes them. Or we could go forward in time to Chaim Ibn Attar, famous Moroccan rabbi who wrote a commentary called Or HaChaim. I thought since we just did a commentary, Rambam's commentary, it would be fun to do something a little different. Tanchuma is a midrash, not a commentary, in the sense that we think, or in the sense that we're used to.
Tanchuma?
Tanchuma. Tet Nun Chet Vav Mem Tanchuma.
These indictments are a manifestation of that, but he put next the follow-up.
Yeah, we're doing some Tanchuma this morning.
Is that a commentary?
It's a midrash. So the most famous midrash is probably the Midrash Rabbah. This is the other one. This is a different one. Already did Midrash Rabbah, although it was like 4 years ago. And we didn't really comprehensively do Midrash Rabbah. We just did a little bit of every week for 54 weeks. So Midrash Tanchuma has some Agadah in it, has some Halacha in it. We may skip the Halacha because it gets real technical and it's not something we need to be real concerned about. Like if you're fasting the day before the Sabbath, when do you break the fast? If you break your fast on the day you're fasting, you didn't really fast that day. But if you go into the Sabbath while still fasting, you're fasting on the Sabbath for a little bit. And that's not allowed either. Actually, that's kind of an interesting question. Maybe we will do the halacha. Yeah. Even if it's not immediately applicable to your situation, it sort of shows you the questions. And that's, again, we want to have the same questions a Jewish person would have when they encounter a verse. So we know what we don't know. We know what to look for when we read Paul and Jesus and these other guys. Bereshit, as many other commentaries do, Tanchuma assumes a question, doesn't state the question. The question is, why does it say Bereshit? Why does it say Bereshit? Why not Bereshana or some other? Right. So the problem is the word is in like construct form, meaning English doesn't have a construct form or genitive form. So the construct form is sort of like putting our preposition of after a word. Hebrew doesn't use a separate word like our of. It just tweaks the original word and gives it a different ending. And then that's how they do it. English is kind of that way for a lot of things. We just throw an extra little word in, usually a preposition, to show the relationship between two words. Whereas a lot of other languages will just change the word. They'll change the ending of the word, so it's still all one word. Bereshit means, it could be translated in the beginning of. It's not translated that way in your Bible. Because the question of what that means, so the reason that it's written that way is not easy to answer. So people, I think a lot of English Bible translators assume that it's an archaic version of the word, or it doesn't. Maybe it's not really in construct form. But Midrash Tanchuma takes the sort of classic answer that the same one you find in many other commentaries in Midrashim. It begins, in reference to this verse, it states, this is Proverbs 3:19, Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. With wisdom. B'chokhmah, with wisdom. So the same preposition where it says that Hashem founded the earth with wisdom, it's the bait. It's the same prepositional prefix that's appended to Reshit in our verse. So the Midrash is drawing a connection between this bait in Bereshit, in the beginning of, and this B'chokhmah, Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. He didn't found it like in wisdom. Right? The Midrash is showing us that this preposition bait doesn't have to mean in or at the beginning, in the beginning. It can mean with. So maybe it means with Reshit instead of in the beginning. It means with Reshit. This word beginning comes from a Hebrew root that means head or first. Rosh means head, means first. So you can see how you would get the word beginning from it. The first, the beginning of something is the first part of something. Of course, the head is the first part of your body if you're looking from the top down. So that makes sense. What is Reshit, though? In this case, what is Reshit? Well, the Midrash explains, for when the Holy One, blessed is He, created His world, He consulted with the Torah and then created the world. As it is stated, it's also in Proverbs 8:14. Counsel and sound wisdom are mine. I am understanding, and might is mine. Midrash understands this verse in Proverbs as the whole Torah. Of course, the Proverbs isn't in the Torah proper. It's not in the first 5 books of the Bible. The word Torah can have a broader meaning. The word Torah can refer to the whole Old Testament. The word Torah can refer to this Midrash, any sort of Bible discussion, teaching. The Midrash understands Proverbs 8:14 as the Torah talking about itself. So Proverbs 8:14 is the Torah saying, counsel and sound wisdom are mine, I am understanding, and might is mine. In other words, all these things are inherent to or found in the Torah. You can find counsel, sound wisdom, and understanding in the Torah. So naturally, if God wanted to create a sensible world, He would first consult the Torah, get some counsel and sound wisdom and understanding. Of course, God doesn't need those things, and of course, God wrote the Torah to begin with. So this is, it doesn't really, it maybe raises more questions than it answers. But it is the same thing you find at the beginning of Midrash Rabbah. Midrash Rabbah begins very similarly, like a builder building a building who has to look at the plans drawn up by the architect first. God looked at the Torah before creating the world. The common theme in Midrashim on this verse. In other words, Reshit is the Torah, and so the first verse can be interpreted with the Torah, God created the heavens and the earth. Or according to what He found in the Torah, God created the heavens and the earth.
So if that's the case, he made the Torah before.
Yes. Yeah, so the Talmud, I think, states that there were 7 things created before the world was created. One of them is the Torah. One of them is Gehenna, so it wasn't all. There's some things God created before the world.
I did not know that because I thought it was done after all creation and,
Yeah.
As He went on, before.
Right. Right, and that's what you'd think. I mean, when you look at, like at the end of Deuteronomy, where we just saw a couple of weeks ago, it says Moses wrote down all this Torah. So, that's where it came from, right there. But the rabbis concluded that, partially based on interpretations like this, maybe it was just a tradition that dates back and we're not sure how it ended up coming about. The rabbis came to the conclusion that God first wrote the Torah, all the things that were going to happen, even the real specific things, like what people were going to do and all that. The rabbis thought that God write that all down before it happened, before he even created the world. Either that, or there's some, more esoteric or difficult interpretation of the word Torah. And what we have is just a reflection of a higher blueprint. But I don't know about that. I think they're probably talking about the Torah, but I don't know. And so the Midrash immediately sort of just starts going in different directions. We'll have to get used to that here. The Midrash continues, on what was the Torah inscribed? With black fire on white fire. Black fire on white fire. So if you read descriptions in Jewish literature of the tablets, the 2 tablets of the commandments that God gave to Moses, it's not just 2 stone tablets. It's the letters were fire and the tablets were fire. I think something like that. Black fire on white fire. As it is stated, the Midrash says, his hair locks are tresses, black as a raven. This is from a Song of Solomon. And this is going to quote Song of Solomon periodically as being sort of secretly talking about something other than the love relationship between the 2 people that are portrayed in Song of Solomon. His hair locks are tresses, black as a raven. What is the meaning of these 2 Hebrew words translated hair locks or tresses? On each and every tip, there are mounds and mounds of halakha. So this is just sort of using the letters and the words, the Hebrew words translated as hair locks or tresses, cut them up into a couple different words or using the same root to form this phrase, on every tip there are mounds and mounds. What are the mounds and mounds of halakha? This word tip, coats, it's a reference to the decorative crowns, I think, on the letters of the Torah. So if you read an actual Torah scroll, some of the Hebrew letters will have these little decorative crowns adorning specific parts of specific letters. And the legend goes that Moses saw those crowns and said, what do they mean? What is the significance? He didn't get it. And then he was able to see into the future. He saw Rabbi Akiva was driving halakha from these crowns. In other words, he saw some significance in the crown, adorning the letters of the Torah. And Moses was happy that someone got it. But it's not going to go on to talk about the crown specifically. It's going to go on to talk about distinguishing marks of specific letters. Right. So you know what a chet looks like? What a chet? Maybe I got this. Yeah, someone give me a pen. Okay. So the letter chet looks like this essentially. I mean, this isn't a very nice looking cat, but this is the basic shape of it. This is the basic shape of a cat. It's just closed on the top, left and right, open on the bottom. And the hay looks like this. Again, it's my penmanship. My Hebrew penmanship is terrible, but you can see they're really similar. The hay, the only thing different about the hay is it's missing a little bit. It's missing a tiny little part of the letter there. Right. All other respects, the same exact shape, but the hay is just got a little bit cut out of it there.
Is that a hay? I mean, a couple with it.
Huh? No, it's a tet.
Oh.
Tet's pretty similar to both of these. So how can we tell that in each little piece of a letter there's significance? Well, what if you take this this verse, Leviticus 22:32. Leviticus 22:32 says, "You shall not profane my holy name." Well, the word profane is tichalel. I don't know if that. This doesn't have anything to do with that, so I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Yeah, tichalel.
Jacob, was that
Huh?
Proverbs? Was
What?
that Proverbs?
No, this is Leviticus 22:32.
Okay, thanks.
You
Yeah.
shall not profane my holy name.
Okay.
Well, so that word has a chet in it. What if you take the chet and you change it into a hey by just erasing the tiny little bit there? Well, it changes the meaning of the word.
Hmm.
The word hallel is praise. So it would say, you shall not praise my holy name. So the Midrash says, if you change that chet into a hey, you destroy the world.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Here we see our connection to the previous part of the Midrash. God looked at the Torah and created the world. If you change anything about the Torah, you destroy the world that God created by or through or with the Torah. Another verse states, let every living soul praise God. And it's Hallel. If you change that into a chet, it changes praise into profane. So let every soul profane.
Hmm.
It would destroy the world. Similarly, here, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. What if you mess with one of the letters in Echad, right? So here we're going to look at two different letters. We have a Dalet, not a Dalek, but a Dalet, and a Resh. So I'll try to write a Dalet and a Resh here. Here's a Dalet and a Resh. So here you have the Dalet,
Yeah.
you have the Resh. The only difference is the Dalet has this little guy here sticks out over the edge of the vertical line, right? The Dalet is there on the left. The Resh is over here on the right. And you see they're almost the same. And depending on the typeface, it can be, I've sort of almost exaggerated that. Like I have to look real close sometimes to make sure I'm reading it correctly. Because they're very similar in most fonts, most Hebrew typefaces. So what is Hashem Echad? Hashem is one. God is one. And so that's spelled Aleph Chet Dalet. What if you take that Dalet and you erase that tiny little bit so it looks like a Resh? Well, that's a different Hebrew word, and it means other. So it would say Hashem is another, which would imply that there is more than one. And there's a verse that says, you shall not bow down to another. That's that same Hebrew word that looks exactly like Echad, except it has the Resh instead of the Dalet. You're not allowed to worship that. So you would end up destroying the world because you wouldn't be allowed to worship God because he's another instead of being one. Another verse, it says they denied Hashem, and if there's that one's a base and a chaf. A base and a chaf also look almost exactly the same. And it gives a couple more examples.
Kind of makes you appreciate all the scribes that had to meticulously copy the Torah scrolls, back before there was printing, and how meticulous they had to be.
Yeah. So the Midrash Tanchuma keeps going here. It says if just a single letter can cause this, all the more so to change an entire word. Therefore, it is stated, his hair locks are tresses. In other words, there are mounds and mounds of halakha and even a part of a letter.
Jacob, what verse is that you're talking about with the hair breadth?
Oh, the hair locks, that's Song of Solomon 5:11.
5:11. Thank you.
David therefore praises and says, your commandment is exceedingly broad. And it states, its measure is longer than the earth. It's from Psalms and from Job. And the Torah was the guide for the entire creation, as it is stated in Proverbs 8:30, I was a nursling beside him. A nursling beside him. Now, if you just switch two of the letters around in the word nursling, you get tutor or guide. And you find that Midrash will do this frequently. It will say, don't read it as it's written. Read it as a slightly different word. Which is strange to me because we just went through this whole thing of if you even change a letter, But there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. It's not really something that's done today. There's types of interpretation you find in these midrashim that you don't find people doing today. Like I would never go into the Torah, switch some letters around, and say read this. These midrashim, these ancient ways of interpreting the Torah, I think the way rabbis look at them today is that only under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit were these guys able to pick out these little tweaks you can make to get a different meaning. Because they don't always follow some kind of rule that you could discern and go do it yourself. But anyway, the Torah was like a tutor or a guide. Furthermore, because of the Torah, he hung the heavens and founded the earth. As it is stated, if it were not for my covenant with day and night, the statutes of heaven and earth I did not place. Now the covenant with day and night is being interpreted here as referring to Torah study. Because it says about the Torah in Joshua 1:8, you shall meditate in it day and night. So what the Midrash is saying here is, because of Torah study, God created the world. God wouldn't have placed the statutes of heaven and earth if it weren't for the fact that people were eventually going to study the Torah. And through the Torah, the ocean was constrained so that it would not inundate the world, as it is stated in Jeremiah. Will you not fear me, declares Hashem, do you not tremble before me, for I made sand as a boundary for the sea, a statute that is everlasting. The ocean is not allowed to cross the sand and inundate the land because of God's decree. And through it, the deep was suppressed so that it should not flood the world, as it is stated when he drew a circle over the face of the deep. It's Proverbs again, 8:27. And through it, so if you remember, these are the two things that happened during the flood. The waters, the deep was open, waters came up from the deep, certainly crossed the beaches, inundated the land. So the reason they don't do it anymore is because God has decreed that they're not allowed to. Yeah.
You said something about God having a covenant with light and darkness.
Yeah.
Do the sages use that same language with all of the different days of creation? It's, like in the Protestant world, it's sort of like poof, it showed up. But can it be safe to say that the sages sort of are alluding to the fact that God made sort of covenants or legal agreements with everything that was created in a way?
It seems more unilateral than that. The way that the Midrash is going here, God just told the ocean what it was allowed to do. Although, interestingly, he did make an agreement with the ocean. The ocean was upset that it wasn't able to participate in the sacrifices. So God said, okay, well, I'll tell the Israelites they have to put salt on all the sacrifices. And of course, that's where salt comes from. In ancient times, you evaporate ocean water, you get sea salt. So there is, God did make a deal with the ocean. So, I don't know if he did it with everything.
Thank you.
All right. And through the Torah, through it, he created the sun and the moon, as it is stated. Thus said Hashem, who gives the sun as light by day, and the laws of the moon, and the stars as light by night, who stirs up the sea and its waves roar. Hashem, master of hosts, is his name. That's Jeremiah again, Jeremiah 31:34. From here you learn that the world was established only for the Torah, and the Holy One, blessed is he, gave it to Israel, so that they should engage in it and its mitzvahs day and night. As it is stated, you shall meditate in it day and night. Again, Joshua 1:8. And it states, but his desire is in the Torah of Hashem, and in his Torah he meditates day and night. He shall be as a tree planted beside streams of water. You all know that verse. It's Psalm 1. It is for the sake of those who observe the Torah that the world exists. As Hannah said, Samuel's mother, the pillars of the world are to Hashem. Who are the pillars of the world? Well, it's the people who observe the Torah. For in their merit, the foundation of the world was laid, as it is stated, and he established the universe on them. So this is interpreting Hannah's monologue in the beginning of 1 Samuel. It's saying the pillars of the world, the reason the world exists, the reason that God went through with creating the world is because he saw that some people were going to study and observe the Torah. You find this in a few other places. God had a conversation with the angels before he created, at least before he created people. And the angels said, why would you create people? And then God said, yeah, it sounds fun. Angels said, no, that's not gonna be good. They go back and forth, and then while the angels are arguing with each other, because some angels thought it was a good idea, some thought it was a bad idea, God created people while they weren't looking. But the reason he did was he saw that there would be righteous people in the future. So someday there's going to be people studying the Torah, observing the Torah. And so they're called the pillars of the world because of the reason God followed through with creating the world, because he saw in the future people would be observing the Torah.
What's that verse in 2 Samuel or 1 Samuel?
It's 1 Samuel 2:8.
Thank you.
It has been taught, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, why do we find that in the creation of the world, it is stated, one day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, the sixth day. Speaks a little explanation, right? So you have Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi'i, sorry. There's no Yom Rishon, which is funny. And so forth. But then when you get to the sixth day, it's Yom Hashishi. It adds the Hebrew particle, it adds the Hebrew way of basically what they have instead of our word the. So every other day it's just a third day or third day, fourth day. But sixth day is the sixth day, Yom Hashishi. So why does it wait until then to add this letter Hey? But regarding all the other days, it only says, it says without the Hey, and the same applies so forth. This teaches us that the Holy One, blessed is he, stipulated at the beginning of creation and said to his creations, if Israel accepts the Torah, which contains the 5 books, all well and good. But if not, I will return you to nothingness and emptiness. So when God offered the Torah to Israel at Mount Sinai, Israel said, we will do and we will obey. If they'd have said anything else, the universe would have disappeared.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Similarly, the sons of Korah said, the earth and all its inhabitants are melted. I have firmly established its pillars, Selah. This refers to the Torah, which was begun by the Holy One, blessed is he. So God begins the 10 Commandments with this word Anochi. And this, so what this Psalm is saying, according to the Midrash, is that the earth and all its inhabitants were melting away. But then Israel received the commandments, which was able to preserve the pillars of the world, and the world was able to go on existing. And the sages connect this verse, Psalm 75:4, about the earth melting, with the first commandment, with this word Anochi, which is a Hebrew way of saying I. Continuing to speak about the Torah, the Midrash goes on and says, Moshe, our teacher, merited to accept it. For the Torah, its soul is humility and its crown is fear. This word soul is S-O-L-E. It's the bottom of the foot. Bottom of the foot of the Torah is humility, and its crown is fear of God. So the soul here, the foot, is sort of it's like foundational. It's like you think it's not important, and sometimes it's the sole of the foot is used as that kind of analogy in Judaism. Like some rabbis will say, we are the soles of the feet. This generation of Israel is the soles of the feet of the whole person of Israel. In other words, it's sort of the lowest part. But in a sense, it's also like this, when it's talking about the bottom of the foot of the Torah being humility, it's sort of, it's a step that comes early in the process, right? So you have to start with humility because you need humility in order to reach fear of God. You need humility first to be able to reach fear of God. If you're not a humble person, you won't realize your failings. You won't realize that you're not actually that important, and you won't be able to have fear and awe of God in your heart because you won't really see yourself properly. This reminded me of Mesulat Yesharim. So this Moshe Chaim Luzzatto wrote it. Mesulat Yesharim, the path of the just was the work of Musar. And it's really, it's interesting because he systematizes self-improvement, and he lists character traits that people need to develop in order to be good people, but he puts them in order and says how to develop one from the other. And so the first one I think is watchfulness. You got to pay attention to what you're doing. And the last one it ends with is holiness. Well, the second to last one is fear of sin. And the third to last one is humility. So I thought it was interesting that in Mesulat Yesharim, humility also comes before fear. You can't really develop a proper fear of God or fear of sinning against God until you develop some humility. Because before that, you might think, well, do what I want. I'm the master of my own domain. So the Midrash is going to identify where these ideas come from: the soul of humility and the crown of fear. The first comes from Proverbs 22:4, which says, "In the wake of humility comes the fear of Hashem." In the wake of humility, this is the wake, like when a boat goes by and there's some wavy stuff behind it. That's the wake, what's trailing behind. So again, this puts humility first and fear of God second. It's Proverbs 22:4. And that word wake, the Hebrew word for wake, is the same as the word for heel, the heel of the foot. Sort of makes sense. Its crown is fear, as it is stated in Psalm 111:10. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of Hashem. Can I find that in the beginning of wisdom? Let's see what the word for. Yeah, okay. So it's Reshit Chachma. Reshit Chachma. Again, what does beginning have to do with crown? Crown goes on your head. Your head's a rosh. Beginning is the same Hebrew root there. It connects the idea of crown to the idea of head, to the idea of beginning. Connect those dots a little bit right now. So the beginning of the wisdom is the fear of Hashem. Both of these verses, the one about humility and the one about wisdom, both these verses refer to Moses, our teacher, as it is stated. Where does it state Moses was humble? Well, that's in Numbers 12:3. The man Moses was exceedingly humble. Where is it written about Moses fearing God? That's Exodus 3:6. Moses hid his face because he feared to gaze at God. Or he was at the burning bush. And our rabbi said, in reward for 3, he merited 3. In reward for hiding his face at the bush, He merited the radiance of his countenance. When he came down from the mountain, his face was glowing. In reward for fearing God, it was being afraid to show his face to God at the bush, he merited that others would fear him. When he came down from the mountain, his face was glowing. No one wanted to come close to him. They were afraid of it. In reward for refraining to gaze at the bush, he merited that he gazes at the image of Hashem. This is a reference to Numbers 12:8, where God is talking to Aaron and Miriam after they complain a little bit, and says to them, Moses, all the other prophets are not as good as Moses. Moses talks with me face to face. Yeah, it's going to have to go through its cool down cycle now, and actually, maybe you should go somewhere else. All right, Midrash is going to sort of broach a new subject a little bit. I'm still talking about the Torah, but it's maybe a paragraph break here. There is no reward for Torah in this world, only in the world to come. This isn't, completely agreed on in Judaism, by the way. But this is what the Midrash Tanchuma thinks. There's no reward for Torah in this world, only in the world to come. So you study Torah in this world and you get the reward in the world to come. You don't get it in this world. Midrash Tanchuma quotes Deuteronomy 7:11, which says, which I command you today to perform. In other words, today you have to perform it, but not in the world to come. Today to perform, but not today to take the reward. Sorry. I guess in the world to come, we won't have to be commanded to perform it. Maybe that's what it means. It certainly seems to mean, according to Midrash Tanchuma, that the reward doesn't come today. Perform today, get the reward later. Similarly, Shlomo said, and this is about the Eshet Chayil, the woman who gets it done, in Proverbs 31. Strength and majesty are her attire, and she laughs at the final day. Right. So once the day comes when she receives her reward in the world to come, that's when she gets to reap the joy of all that she's accomplished in this world. Come and learn this from Pharaoh, who said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and we shall become extremely great, as it is stated, Pharaoh removed his ring, and so forth. With the story of Joseph, we have Pharaoh. Joseph ends up getting promoted, and all these good things happen for Joseph. He ends up being very powerful. And Pharaoh says, as he's talking to Joseph, I am Pharaoh. So Pharaoh saying, I am Pharaoh, was a good omen for Joseph. Lots of good things happened to Joseph after that. So the Holy One, blessed is he, who concerning each mitzvah said, I am Hashem. All the more so do we learn that there's no limit to its reward. So if even Pharaoh, this is a Paul Homer argument, if even Pharaoh, who's wicked, brings great benefits and rewards to Joseph after saying, I am Pharaoh, so much more God, who is good, will bring great benefits and rewards to the Jewish people, because he said, I am Hashem, around so many of these commandments. David foresaw this and said, how abundant is your goodness that you've stored away for those who fear you. Pretty straightforward. Throughout the passage describing creation, the term, pa'ula, is not written, but concerning reward, the word pa'ula is used, as is written. You have, and it's translated here as performed. You have performed for those who seek refuge in you, which is the same verse. So Proverbs, or not Proverbs, Psalm 31:20. How abundant is your goodness, you have stored away for those who fear you. You have performed for those who seek refuge in you. What is this? What is the Midrash saying here? So the creation account, which we're still in here, technically in the Midrash. We're commenting on the creation account. God didn't do anything like more than just talking. He just spoke everything into existence. It doesn't look like it was difficult. I mean, he didn't have to labor over it. He just spoke and everything happened. It took no effort. But this Hebrew word "pa'ula," it seems to indicate that something that does require a little more effort. Comparatively speaking, God labored to perform something that was much more difficult, or again, nothing's difficult for God. Relatively speaking, more effort was put into this, all that is going to be stored up for the righteous in the world to come. So this world was created with just a word, but the world to come, God put some real thought and effort into the reward for the righteous. That's what the Midrash gets from this Psalm 31:20, and this word "pa'ula," which does not appear in the creation account. God didn't have to work hardly at all to get this done.
That kind of lines up with Jesus, I've gone to prepare a place for you, so there's work happening for that
Yeah.
final, And don't store up things up here on earth where the rust gets it, but store up things in heaven.
Yeah.
So the reward in the afterlife.
You will find that the Holy One, blessed is He, reveals the reward of those occupied in Torah at the time of their deaths. So you don't get to know what your reward is going to be until you're dead. The story is told of Rabbi Abahu that when he was about to depart the world, the Holy One, blessed is He, showed him 13 rivers of balsam juice. I don't know what that is. I think isn't the balsam a tree? It's like some kind of tree sap.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is literal. It's sort of like we talked about this a few weeks ago, and Paul says some people get gold and silver and precious stones. No one cares about that stuff when you're dead. So it's using an analogy, something that it's something that you'll want then just as much as you want that stuff now. So the rivers of balsam juice is just an idiom. It's a description in material terms of a reward that's actually completely spiritual. It's a pretty good one, apparently. One commentary says that these 13 rivers corresponds to the 13 principles of faith. But Midrash Tanchuma came before Maimonides, so I think it probably doesn't. But who knows? At the time of his death, he began telling his disciples, "You are fortunate for being occupied in Torah." They said to him, "Our teacher, what did you see?" He said to them, 13 rivers of balsam juice have been given to me by the Holy One, blessed is He, in reward for my Torah. Then he began saying, "But I said that I have toiled in vain. I consumed my strength for nothing and vanity. Yet surely my judgment is with Hashem, and the reward for my deed is with God." What does that mean? The Tanchuma doesn't explain, so other commentaries have had to try to explain what this means. It sounds like he's disappointed. He wasn't disappointed. So it's possible that he thought his merit wasn't great enough to actually receive that reward, that he would eat into that reward by making some mistake here on earth, and who wouldn't get the whole thing after he died. Or it's also possible that this guy, Rabbi Abahu, kept on keeping the Torah for the rest of his life as if he were not going to receive a reward. Right? So because you find, I think this is a Pirkei Avot, even if you are going to get a reward for keeping the Torah, for doing acts of kindness and so forth, you should do them like someone who's not going to get a reward. You do them because it's the right thing to do. Don't do them to get the reward, even though you are going to get one. Don't do them just to get the reward. Do them because you love God and you want to do what's right. Similarly, Isaiah said, "Fortunate are you who sow by all waters." What does that mean? This refers to the ones who are occupied in Torah, which is compared to water. In Isaiah 55, verse 1, all who thirst go to the water. Jesus, he talks about living water, right? Jesus says, whoever believes in me will never thirst, because out of his belly will flow rivers of living water. Him being a reference to Yeshua, by the way. Out of his belly will flow rivers of living water. It doesn't refer to you and me. It refers to Jesus. Out of his belly will flow rivers of living water, because he is compared to the temple. And the temple in Old Testament prophecy is described as having a spring out of which comes rivers of living water, which is an idiom for the Torah in the Old Testament and in Jesus, talking about thirsting for water. It's thirsting for the Torah, wanting to understand the Torah, wanting to understand how to live it out. Those who send the ox to roam freely, this is again in Isaiah 32. Those who send the ox to roam freely on the donkey, the ox refers to Messiah, son of Joseph, who's compared to an ox. The donkey refers to Messiah, son of David, as it is stated, the poor man and riding on a donkey. Zechariah 9:9, famous prophecy of the Messiah arriving on a donkey. This is kind of interesting. It doesn't elaborate on this, but we do find several places in Jewish tradition the idea of two messiahs. Messiah, son of Joseph, suffers and probably dies in battle, and the Messiah, son of David, comes and has victory in battle and reigns as king. When they arrived, it is stated concerning that time, and no one had ever heard or had ever perceived, no eye had ever seen a God besides you. Isaiah 64:3. And it states, fortunate are those whose way is perfect, who follow the Torah of Hashem. Psalm 119. That is to say, fortunate are those who honor the Torah scholars. And it states it's a tree of life to those who grasp it, and those who support it are praiseworthy. So the people who grasp it are the Torah scholars. They understand the Torah and they teach about it. The people who support it are the people who finance the Torah scholars, who pay money to make sure the Torah scholars have time to go study Torah, and they're not always engaged in manual labor. That's Proverbs 3:18, by the way. It's a tree of life to those who grasp it, and those who support it are praiseworthy. If you take, and so did Moshe say, for if you will observe, the Hebrew word, the word for observe there being shamor. So it's the same word you find like shomer Shabbos, someone who guards the Sabbath, shomer Shabbos. So the Hebrew root, shin mem resh, refers to guarding usually. So, but the Midrash says if you shomer the Torah scholars, then you'll be protected. So if you support the Torah scholars, guard the Torah scholars in the sense of make sure they have the time and place to study Torah, which is usually referring to like financial support, then you will be protected. God will guard you. You guard the Torah scholars, God will guard you. Similarly, it states, for I honor those who honor me, and those who scorn me will be disgraced. 1 Samuel 2:30. This refers to the one who honors Torah scholars. And we learned in Deuteronomy 10:20, Hashem your God you shall fear. So, grammatically, that's God is the direct object of the sentence. And it would be understood just because of Hebrew word order, if that's what it means. But sometimes in Hebrew, they'll throw a little preposition before the direct object, a little direct object marker. In other words, et, and it's the first letter of the alphabet and the last letter of the alphabet. Aleph, Tav, et. And because you don't really always need that clarification to know what word is the direct object of the sentence, in Hebrew will throw it in there sometimes anyway. The rabbis will interpret it in some way. So, well, the word et here means something. And here, the extra word et at the beginning of this verse, Hashem your God shall you fear. it comes to include those who study Torah. There is nothing else which can be compared to it, as it is stated, is more precious than pearls. So I think this is saying that people should also have some fear for those who study Torah. Not as much, but a little bit. It is more precious than the Kohen Gadol, who ministers in the innermost chambers. The Torah is more precious than the high priest. And the Torah cries out, "Fortunate is the man who listens to me. Whoever obeys the Torah will not be harmed," as it is stated, "but the one who listens to me will dwell confidently, and he will be undisturbed." And it says, "When you walk, it will lead you." And these are all just quotes from Proverbs, I think. So that's like the first Midrash here in Midrash Tanchuma. The next one is the one where they talk about that fasting on Friday. They talk about a lot of other stuff about Shabbat too. So maybe we'll try to get into it and see what. All right. A query or a question. The house of Israel is obligated to rest on the Sabbath day. When the Holy One, blessed is He, created the world, He created it in 6 days and rested on the Sabbath day. He blessed it and sanctified it. Like one who builds a house and completes the work, and then he makes a holiday to celebrate. And as people say at this festive meal after completing a house, it's a celebration for completing my house. As is written, God completed on the seventh day. And the merciful one says, rest on the Sabbath day, just as I rested, as is written, He rested on the seventh day, and therefore Hashem blessed. And on the Sabbath day it is forbidden to fast. And one is obligated to delight in it with food and drink, and to honor it with a fresh garment, as is stated, if you restrain your foot because of the Sabbath, famous passage in Isaiah 58. If you proclaim the Sabbath a delight, means that your eating on Shabbos, your eating on Shabbat, should not resemble your eating on a weekday, but you should make it pleasurable. And in reward for that, it is written, then you will delight in Hashem. So during the week, you eat to live, but on Sabbath, you enjoy it. You eat just for how good it tastes. And on the holy day of Hashem, honored. That's again Isaiah 58. This teaches you should not behave with lightheadedness on it, but you should sanctify it and honor it in all aspects. Sometimes you got to pay attention and remember that it's the Sabbath, and not just sort of float through it unaware. How do you honor it? With beautiful clothes and clean garments, but you should not treat it like a weekday. Like Rabbi Yochanan, who called his clothes his honor. And Rabbi Huna said, whoever has a special outfit to change into should change. If not, he should let his clothes down. This is just talking about the kind of clothes they wore back then. Back then, they had long, like, cloak thing they would wear. And if you're out busy working, you would gird up your loins. So you would take the cloak, you'd take the extra and sort of wrap it around your legs and tie it up so that your cloak wasn't dragging in the dirt and getting stuff all over it from the vegetation and the fields. Just make you a little bit more mobile. You can move more freely with your loins skirted. On the Sabbath, though, this Rabbi Huna said, if you don't have a special outfit to change into, at least let your cloak hang freely. Refrain from pursuing your regular business. This means your walking on Sabbath should not resemble your walking on a weekday. A weekday you might be in a hurry to get somewhere, but on the Sabbath you should just stroll. Again, from Isaiah 58, refrain from discussing the forbidden. This brings to mind the mother of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was engaged in a conversation on Shabbat. He said to her, today is Shabbat, so she was quiet. So you're not allowed to talk about this normal stuff. Rabbi Hanina said they only allowed greeting on Shabbat reluctantly. So it is allowed to say hello and just standard greetings to someone on Shabbat. Only because if you didn't do that, someone might misunderstand and think you're upset with them. But on the merits, that's the kind of thing that normally you wouldn't be allowed to do on Shabbat, because it's not holy. It's not talking about Torah. It's just it's weekday talk. It's regular talk. Gives you an idea of the category of what would be forbidden and what would be allowed on Shabbat. What's allowed to talk about, not regular stuff. However, the Midrash is going to go on and give us some exceptions to all these. It says, however, we have to consider the following. If one wishes to go to an occasion which involves a mitzvah, or to prayer, or to study in the Beit Midrash, he's allowed to take, or is he allowed to take long strides on Shabbat? A long stride is a stride longer than a cubit. They're not that long. So it's talking about going a little faster. Can you go a little faster on Shabbat if you're going to the house of study, or if you're going to pray, or if you're going to do a mitzvah? Is the mitzvah more important, or is the honor of Shabbat more important? We can bring proof from the following. Rabbi Tanchuma said in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, a person should always run to do something involving a mitzvah, even on Shabbat. Rabbi Zera said, at first, I saw the rabbinic scholars running to a lecture on Shabbat, and I thought the rabbinic scholars were desecrating the Shabbat. But when I heard what Rabbi Tanchuma said, I ran too. The passage concludes by saying the main reward one receives for attending a Torah lecture is for running to attend it. The main reward one receives for attending a Torah lecture is for running, in other words, for being excited to be there. Now, it seems like that you get more merit from hearing and understanding the words of the lecture. Rashi explained this by saying most people don't understand anything from the Torah lecture. They don't understand it, so the only reward they get is for being excited to be there. Rashi had kind of a dim view of the scholastic ability of his average student. Maharsha explains a little differently. So this is talking about people who do understand, but they don't even really need to listen to the lecture because they already are familiar with the content, but they still receive a reward for being excited to be there, for running to go hear it. Now, we also said refrain from pursuing irregular business refers to personal business that's forbidden. But a business that relates to spiritual needs, is that forbidden or is it permissible? By the way, it's interesting what they brought proof from. What they brought proof from was this Rabbi Tanchuma, but it was a story of some people who did some stuff, and so sometimes you can bring proof from watching someone you know is going to do it right. Anyway, so Rabbi Elazar said on Shabbat, you may allocate charity for the poor. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Edi said, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, we may go to synagogues and houses of Torah study on Shabbat to attend to the affairs of the public. Right, so allocating money to the poor is permissible. Attending to the affairs of the public is permissible. So an issue that affects the whole community can be raised and discussed. Rabbi Yochanan said we may attend to matters of life and death on Shabbat. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, we may go to palaces and conference halls on Shabbat, in other words, secular places, to attend to public needs. Rabbi Menashe taught we may arrange matches to betrothed girls on Shabbat. We may arrange for someone to teach children scripture, and even to learn a trade on Shabbat. So you can't learn a trade on Shabbat, but someone can arrange for you to have a teacher. You know, on Shabbat in the synagogue, if someone doesn't have a trade yet, you can say, oh, teach that guy. Because there's a principle in the Talmud that if you don't learn a trade, if you don't teach your son a trade, you're teaching him to be a thief. Discussing the forbidden. Discussing the forbidden? What about thinking? You just think about something you're not supposed to talk about on Shabbat? Yeah, you can think about it. They also said it's forbidden to fast a voluntary fast, but if you had a dream and you wish to sit in hunger by fasting to annul the dream, that's permitted. For Rava Bar Machseya said the name of Rabbi Chama Bar Guya, who said the name of Rava. Fasting is beneficial for a dream like fire to flax. Just like fire easily consumes what's left over after you take the flax seed out of the flax plant. It's really dry at that point. Fasting will annul a dream. This is talking about, and then Rabbi Yosef said, if it's on the same day of the dream. So you wake up Saturday morning, I guess, and you had this horrible dream that something bad was going to happen to you. The rabbi said, you can now fast for the rest of Shabbat to annul that dream, to make sure the bad thing doesn't come to pass. So that's when it's permissible to fast on the Sabbath. We didn't get to this, what if you're fasting on Friday? But that's the next thing. We'll get to it next week.